Hello, this is Samantha and Zessie.
It's your boy, Remoy Georgeville, the first.
And this is Masculinity. I think we have some things that we need to talk about.
Like, swish swish?
Yeah.
Yo, can I tell you, I have anxiety.
About the NBA?
Well, about basketball, which is crazy because I usually don't have anxiety, which sounds like a real flex, but I'm straight up. I don't really,
It doesn't sound like a flex. Let me check you there.
Chill. I don't really deal with anxiety too much. I used to when I was younger, but I don't anymore, except for on the basketball court, because the other morning I woke up mad early. I went to Prospect Park, like the parade grounds, and I started like balling. And then like I realized when there's other dudes around that I don't know, I get super anxious because I'm trying to impress them. I'm trying to like please validate that I'm cool and I'm good at basketball. And anytime I get like an open shot, I'm like stressed out. I'm gonna brick, and then I brick. I have to deal with that.
That's that performance.
That's that math shit.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
I mean, I want to talk about the playoffs. We were going to talk about. So my family's Cameroonian. And so Remoy came at me talking about like who is our favorite Cameroonian player, and
Pascal, dog.
I'm gonna have to go with
Joel's
Embiid.
He's such a brat. He's such a gaudy brat. I completely respect the shit out of him and his game. The dude talks a lot of shit.
I mean, I do like Siakam too.
Oh, Pascal's.
But I looked them all up because I wanted to know where they were from.
That I have no context.
Yeah. Siakam is from my neck of the woods, though. He's from Douala. So anybody check me on that if that's untrue. But anyway.
On our last episode, our live episode, we talked masculinity and fatherhood with Mr. Mark Bacan, who's my favorite podcaster.
Shout out to Mark.
And we were able to talk about race, class, what it means to have or not have a father in some people's cases, like myself. And we try to stay informed and engaged in this practice of what is masculinity, right? And it's a very rich and ripe conversation that we always want to keep going on. So we have a guest today, and he's going to help us continue this conversation on fatherhood and dads. So that guest is a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet, Mr. Gregory Pardlo. Welcome, Gregory.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
No, I'm glad to be here. Yeah, obviously I'm interested in the conversation. So
I think the reason we wanted you here was to talk about fatherhood and masculinity. It's because you have a memoir entitled Air Traffic.
I do.
Oh, yeah. Luckily, me and Samantha have both read it.
I know. So good.
Good.
So many dictionary words, by the way. I was like, yo, Siri was my best friend while I was reading your book. I was like, man, I should have got the electronic version.
There's some Lacan mirror effect in there, and then shout out to lit theory in there. I love that shit.
It's like I'm hella smart now.
But like the subtitles, like where it gets ballsy, and I really like it because then you think air traffic, you're like, all right, whatever. But then you get the subtitle, which is a memoir of ambition and manhood in America.
Yeah.
Should I say that one more time?
Let's hear it again.
Okay, yeah. It's called, or the subtitle is, A Memoir of Ambition and Manhood in America. So that's pretty loaded, Greg.
That's pretty loaded, yeah.
You want to help us unpack that a little bit?
So we got three elements.
Ooh.
Ambition, manhood,
Lovely.
America. The cover of the cover photo for the book is, well, originally it was my father and my brother. But then we superimposed a picture of me over my brother's face.
Smooth. Shout out to graphic designers.
Yeah.
But I was self-conscious about the cover, again, for the obvious reasons, just being self-conscious about my face being on the cover of the book. But I realized that this was a way to introduce the idea of race, right? And so this country has a long history of fearing black men and ambition. That combination has proved lethal over the centuries. And I was thinking about for example, lynching, of course, and the intersection there of ambition and sexuality, right? The fetishization of black male bodies and parts. And then connect that to capitalism and materialism. And my father was a very materialistic person, so I was raised with this idea that, the more shit you have, the more successful you are, right? And so I was interested in exploring what it means to be ambitious, the threats that invites on someone, what it is to craft an idea of manhood, and how all that fits into the capitalist scheme of America.
Well, I'm glad you say capitalistic scheme of America, and especially when we focus this on race. Like, I think, when we say ambition, it kind of posits this kind of unfortunate binary of success and failure, right? And especially in capitalistic America, whether it's within the context of race, and whether we can have this conversation with that, I don't know. But what does failure look like? How does failure sabotage this idea of ambition, especially when it comes into the context of manhood?
On that, like piggybacking on that, I think that one of the things that you really do beautifully in the book is like kind of create a very like complex picture of how these things come together, right? So like one of the things that Remoy is saying, like in terms of, juxtaposing the binary of success and failure, like there's a very rich way that you kind of composite all of that to create a big picture of like what humanity is like in the midst of all of that. And so like that inner conflict of dealing with feelings of insecurity, of inadequacy, like putting that actually like on loudspeaker, not just you, right? But also kind of really getting into your father's head, getting into your brother's head, really break it down like in the context of like your own understanding of manhood, of Black masculinity, of American masculinity.
This would be simple, yeah.
Good luck. Good luck.
You know what I mean? And so, so I just kind of wanted to kind of get an idea of like how, like you really paint that picture, but like how is it for you to kind of boil that down and like then create a human out of yourself for that?
Well, so this is a big part of the project of the book is interrogating all of these narratives that I've just internalized over the years, and to the point where I'm not even aware of the value system that the values that I hold. My father, well, we can start with my grandmother, who was famous for telling my father, "I don't care if you're a thief, you better be the best damn thief there ever was." Right, and this was the kind of value system in our family. So my brother was driven to overachieve. I was driven to overachieve. But then, what does it mean? At what point have I achieved? Sure. Right, and so there's this treadmill where I realize I'm constantly feeling inadequate. I'm constantly feeling like I haven't done enough, and it's just no fun, and I'm just not enjoying my life, right? And so I started I'm really interested in the getting to some sense of a baseline self. So, Remoy, you were talking about failure and success. Failure, I decided I don't believe in failure.
Me neither, dog.
Okay. It's just a matter of how long a story you have in mind.
Sure.
Right? And so this idea that one can fail put a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah.
And once I started thinking about, well, no, this is a step toward some larger goal, and I need this step in order to learn, and I'm piecing together a larger picture, a larger understanding of myself and how I operate in the world, there is no failure. There's just the end of your life.
Well, I want to use that as a moment because, and we can take this a little further, it's like examine, the portrait of your father in this memoir, because I'll try to tell a quick abridged version, but basically your father was an air traffic controller, and then because of the problematic nature of the strike that happened in the 80s and the conflict with Reagan and Reagan flexing like Reagan.
Like Reagan.
Yeah. It put your father out of work, and, your father had aspired to be so much, and he was such a charismatic person, and he was such an intelligent leader, but then for a long time, and maybe for the infinitude of the rest of his life, kind of sacked his ambition. It was the failure, it was the failing of his life that crumbled every facade of masculinity and fatherhood that he tried to then project or portray. Yeah. So I'm wondering maybe you could talk more about that, as well as, kind of telling the audience about who your father was. Yeah,
so you do a good job. My father was an air traffic controller. He was also a union leader. He was president of the local where the Newark International was, whichever local that was. And when they went on strike, he was largely the public face of the union for the New York area, the New York metropolitan area. And I would see my father on television and, hear him on the radio, and he was in newspapers. And so he was in his glory.
Yeah.
And there was just it was inconceivable that the federal government would fire 13,000 air traffic controllers.
Especially in the busiest airports in the country.
I mean, it's a critical job. I mean, but by the same token, I mean, to be fair to history, it was an illegal strike, and I'm putting that in air quotes because there were other unions who were also for whom it was illegal to strike, but they did go on strike, and they were never jailed or prosecuted. So the union goes on, the air traffic controllers go on strike. Reagan flexing says, "Come back to work or else you're all fired." We're all like, "Yeah, right."
Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And so then in the aftermath of the strike, for a few years, there was just this lingering sense of, well, when are they going to say, okay, this is over, everybody come back to work? Right? And we're just waiting. And then it becomes apparent after a couple of years, it ain't happening. Right? And so there was his pension was gone, the health care is gone, obviously the income, critically, his sense of self was depleted.
Yeah.
And so he had to look for all new narratives to tell himself about who he was. And so in watching that, just began, and I didn't know at the time, I couldn't have articulated at the time what I was doing, but I began to distrust the narratives that set him up to feel like he had failed, right? And so he had invited he'd taken on the narrative of masculinity, taken on the narrative, the paternalism, materialism. He had the house in the suburbs. He had the 2 kids. He had a Corvette. He had the swimming pool. I mean,
life was good.
Life appeared.
He was successful.
Yeah.
Life, exactly right. Yeah.
He projected. Yeah, of course.
I mean, for
his American
for
dream
all
was
appearances,
for
all appearances, and those appearances were for who, right? And so after a while. Like I said, I just started to distrust all of the stories, and I watched my father, and I understood that he could not figure out a new story for himself, and he was doomed from there on. So arguably, he went to work for New Jersey Transit. He went back to the train dispatchers union. But this is this is all second tier stuff to him, and he was never satisfied with any of that work, and it showed. So I watched this guy who was, as we say, charismatic and felt like he owned the world, and if things can be taken away from somebody like that so clearly, then it must be ideological. Right, because there was nothing. I mean, the physical stuff was taken, but as I say, more crucially, his sense of self was taken. What is the function by which someone loses a sense of self? Right, and so being sensitive to how I was constructing my own narratives and the potential for derailing my life, or the potential to have my investment in those narratives kind of destroyed or depleted. I said, "Fuck it, I don't want these narratives. I want to feel the moment. I want to know my friends. I want to enjoy my time. I don't want now." This is by no means suggesting that I am, I have healed myself. The wool has been lifted off of my eyes.
If you have, fucking give it to me. Like, I don't know what you subscribe to, but give it to me.
But that's the path I set myself on.
So is that the path that led you to not only write this memoir, but examine your life and your father's life and the relationships within, as the examination of fatherhood and masculinity? Because this memoir isn't just about your examination of your father's masculinity, but it's grandfathers, it's uncles, but it's also yourself. And you allow yourself to be very, very vulnerable on the page. And, you're critical of yourself, but more so critical of the narratives of the fatherhood and the masculinity. So my question is why?
Well, so I didn't see myself as ever having kids. And that's not because I didn't want kids. It was just, the overgrown adolescent. I just never imagined myself as a father.
Nope.
I didn't see it as a possibility. And, just how does that happen? I don't know. So when I met my wife and we got married and we started having babies, I said, holy shit, I better figure this out real quick because this is real, right? And
I love the way you describe that whole thing. But
we can go back to it. I know it's a little
good.
problematic. Too.
So okay, you know what I'm talking about. I was like, yo. Anyway, okay.
I'm skipping a few things. So, it's kind of perspective problems there. But I realized that I was in a situation. Oh, so this was a thought I had. Sorry, I was very conscious of the narratives of black men as the stereotypes, fallacious as they are, in some cases accurate as they are, of black men as not being attentive, responsible fathers, right? And I was terrified of the stereotype. This is not happening on my watch. That's not how this is going down.
Not fucking happening. I'm not letting this happen.
No. But, as you read the book and you see that to set me up for a whole another set of, this is exactly what is happening, right? So because I'm obsessed with this thing, totally. It's not happening. I am living toward this thing that is going to actually manifesting. Yes. Yeah. But so I am very interested in, and I had been very interested in, well, how the fuck does anybody do this? How does anyone raise children and be, responsive to the self and generous to the children, generous to your partner? My defense mechanism, my go-to move is to intellectualize, right? And so I made it a kind of dissertation project. We are going to deconstruct fatherhood, and I'm going to understand the ideologies that undergird.
Sounds good to me. I love it. That's my MO. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like when you describe parenthood as like prepping for the SATs,
right,
like that.
Right.
I love that. I was like, that's so like meticulously methodical. But one of the things that you're mentioning that I really want to draw on is like this notion of, because I mean, really what struck me about the book is this notion of humanity and really being able to get to the different stages, the different things that people feel. We talk about a lot of different concepts, right? Like we talk about like ambition and manhood and masculinity, but you really did an amazing like job of just like painting the experience of what that actually is like for a person. And the thing that, Remoy and I consistently talk about really is nature versus nurture, right? It's like, there's like these kind of bequeathed ideals that you have from your father that you either have genetically or you have, like socially. But one of the things that you do in the book as well is really contextualize for us kind of like historically and like sociologically what the hell is happening in the country and how that does so much to shape what happens for your father, but then also for you, just in terms of like living in a suburb versus living in Philly, like all these different factors that inform how you craft your own humanity, but also how you're able to really step outside of what you understand as masculinity so that you can actually look at it and pick a different path.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm able to pick a different path. Well, I hope, that's certainly the goal, right? That is the objective. The thing at the center of well, no, it's not the center. There are many things at the center of this book, but one of the things at the center of this book is insecurity and racial insecurity, right? And so the complexes that I grew up with and had internalized. Thank you. You get wrapped up in the ideas I internalized growing up in a white community about my own inferiority. That the belief of my own inferiority was, and it was just in the atmosphere. It was, and I was taking this on, and in order to be back to this idea of ambition, in order to be successful, I believed I had to be something other than what the quote unquote unsuccessful black people were. Sure. I had to be exceptional. And so this narrative of exceptionalism became this other thing I was fighting against. And so when you talk about contextualizing it historically, I wanted to make the argument that there's nothing, while we celebrate middle-class black folks for their achievements, there were plenty of them. There's nothing rare or unique about them, right? And so this story of, the lone Rosa Parks who makes a difference and changes history, and you can do it too, and if everybody just worked hard enough, this the meritocracy thing. And so we have these two narratives: the one of meritocracy and the one of racial inferiority. And I wanted to think about how those were just operative in my life and how I was perpetuating them.
Yeah, and I think that like the big layer, right, in the understanding of manhood is that, this kind of like negotiation of power that happens with that, right? And so like there's a moment in the book where, skipping ahead here a little bit, but I feel like it's appropriate, where you talk about like the incident with Questlove and the elevator with that lady, which like reading that, I didn't even know that had happened actually. And so I'm reading it, I'm like, it's Questlove, like who doesn't know who the fuck Questlove is?
Oh, right.
But
right. Yeah.
Lo and behold, he has this moment where he like notices like palpable fear in this white woman's face as he steps onto the elevator and is offended.
In the building where he lives.
Yeah. And it's like, like that negotiation of like, as a woman, I'm like, thinking about like sexism and as a black woman and racism and all of that. And so it's like this kind of weird understanding of like, there's power in male domination and then subjugation in blackness, but then like kind of understanding that black masculinity, and then also, well, I don't know if I can call it black masculinity, black manhood, black whatever that is, like then like negotiating it in the midst of you just trying to be a human and understanding that you're attracted to who you're attracted to, because you do talk about that in the book, and. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to.
I can talk. We can talk about.
Yeah. So I want to start with a quick story about poetry.
Ooh.
So
Fun.
I recall being in a poetry workshop as an undergrad and asking, well, what makes this poem better than this other poem? And I got this explanation that there was, this symmetry. There's an intrinsic balance here that this poem is exhibiting that this other poem is not, and it just never sat right with me. And it wasn't until I got to grad school where I decided or realized, however, wherever you fall in the conversation, that I don't believe in beauty. That beauty is, we could say beauty is truth, and that old Keatsian thing. But I believe that there is power. There are the structures of power will reinforce whatever notions of beauty will maintain that power.
Can I just ask this flat out question?
Yeah.
what lessons have you learned about manhood? Like because I mean, right now we're in a conversation about masculinity, the performance of masculinity, the
real quick,
expression of masculinity.
Separate the two for me. How are you defining the two as different?
Well,
manhood and masculinity?
Yeah, because the way that I don't want to speak for you, but the way that we usually position masculinity is as it's a performance. Like, so it's this mask that we put on. It's like these learned ideals, and then that have been projected onto us somehow through common culture or previous generations. And then therefore, as we kind of step into that, we then perform these said rituals of these learned traditions. And that is the performance of masculinity. So what is the difference of that masculinity that we constantly talk about with the hard K and the manhood that you're positioning?
Well, so first I want to separate masculinity with the C and masculinity with the K, and then I want to also talk about manhood because I think because
I'm tired already.
I like this. I really want to reiterate because everybody's like throwing masculinity around and like shooting it in hoops and stuff, and like I just want to.
That was good.
I like
what
I did there. No, I really think that it's important for us to really identify when we say the performance of masculinity is like what we think we need to be doing. It's like a should, right? A should of performance that has a lot to do with like basically constraining ourselves rather than being our free selves. That's it. You know what I mean? Masculinity in itself as a set of traits that we understand XYZ, the energy of masculinity. Shout out to you, Remoy. You know what I mean? Like that's something that I think we can kind of like understand for ourselves. I think that's more personal than anything. Yep. Manhood is like the life as lived by a man, I think, right? Or like just
let me take a
the
step.
fact of being a man.
Well, the way I think about manhood, I agree completely with your conception of masculinity. And, of course, you guys have been talking about this quite a bit, so I would expect to have a good handle on it. But my understanding, the way I think about manhood is that this is the concept that, the governing concept, like the manual, manhood. And there's a way in which manhood is always owned by white men.
Okay.
Right?
That.
Yeah. And so there's it is the location and the storehouse of power out of which masculinity gets any weight, to the extent that one performs it in a hollow sense or one performs it in a way that separates children on the border, right? So there are these, the consequences come out of manhood, this larger storehouse.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us kind of like break that down. Like now,
Samantha just winked at me. I don't know if it was a bad wink, like "go fuck yourself" or more. Like,
no,
I
wink all the time.
Remoy.
It's just the thing that I do.
Okay.
It's actually like an acquiescence type of thing,
Sure, I don't know what that word means, but that's fine.
Finally. Well, so like now, like all of this kind of work that you've done, breaking all of this down, like this history of you, of your father, your family, like you understand, because I feel like, I mean, what my sense is that, going through this journey of writing a book, you started with a certain understanding of what manhood was. And so now there's so many brilliant moments in the books, and we haven't even gotten really into the relationship with your brother, but like now, what did you have to say about manhood before? What do you have to say about manhood now? If you have anything different to say about it or at all.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's all bullshit. I mean,
true.
So it's and I think when I started the book, I was trying to figure out how to reconcile with manhood. And by the time I finished the book, I was like, "There's why." Why even play that game, right? It is what it is. And it wants me to be caught up in the game of trying to emulate it, right? Manhood wants me focused on that as an ideology. It's connected to labor and the ability to control one's own labor, right? The patriarchy wants to control everyone's labor, and as a man, if I can control my labor and the labor of my family, my kids, and then then I'm a quote unquote a man.
Mm-hmm.
That's destructive.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but slavery was the original labor union. It was the original form of organized labor in this country.
Oof.
Right. And so manhood, and I'm thinking about the movie Get Out, and the idea of, well, my mind is racing now.
Please,
right?
race.
The football players and
Sure,
Kaepernick and the
NCAA.
I mean, it's all this power struggle is everywhere being enacted, and I think there is no payoff. What is what productive end does it have for society? And I don't think it has one. It is the hollow authority that I was talking about,
sure.
right? And it exists in order to keep us chasing this elusive idea.
Yep.
So manhood, bullshit. Forget it.
Cool.
Well, okay. Well, and I want to live there for a second because if we talk about the control of labor and the kind of traditions within Western colonized world, or the colonized world in and of itself, a major tool for that is, whether it was known beforehand or not, is addiction. Addiction, whether it's alcohol, nicotine, whether it's any sort of illicit drugs, has been used to control people. And again, whether it's meant to be controlling or not, I don't know, but it does.
Well, I'm thinking about, I'm working on a poem now, coincidentally, thinking about my father's addiction to painkillers, which he acquired through the hospital of all places. Well, not surprisingly, actually. And, the the Opium Wars of China. Mm-hmm. The British went to war with China to force them to let the British sell opium there, because they wanted spices so badly. They had a trade deficit. They wanted tea and spices, and in order to balance it, they had to sell opium. You are going to buy our opium.
Sure.
Right? And so it's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It is not. There's nothing murky. There's nothing murky or spooky about it.
Well, and there's that, but I want to focus specifically on, like, because you talk about manhood and masculinity kind of working together as like simulacra and simulation, or the opposite, or no. But anyways, like how addiction fits into that, specifically when it comes into masculinity and the performance thereof, because from a young age we're taught that addiction is cool. And addiction is something you need to have as a part of your core being as to be a man. And when I say that, like, I think of like the Marlboro Man, or like smoking was so fucking cool when I was young. Or like drinking a beer by your lonesome or with your friends, whether it's to celebrate or whether it's to mourn something or to just be lonesome in your solitariness, right? And so it's so married to this.
Or to constantly pursue women.
Sure, absolutely. And that kind of essence of cool is like so tied to being the man and cool, and in this pursuit of yes, women, but also just yourself, right? And your ultimate manhood. But then I remember, like, the first time I had a beer, I was like, this is fucking gross. And like the first time I had whiskey, I'm like, why would I drink this? And the first time I had a cigarette, I'm like, ugh! But then I kept doing it because I kept in the pursuit of this performance, right? Because I was taught and I learned something of the nature, and then in and of itself, I became addicted to it. And then I faced some realities that were very unfortunate for the people closest to me. All that said, you confront addiction in this memoir multi-generationally and within yourself very personally and vulnerably, and within your family. So I wonder, as you're working through putting together this book, again, and within the framework of your intellectuality, like, why and how and what led you to be so thorough and comfortable or uncomfortable with putting it on the page?
So
said a lot of shit.
I get it. My theory about writing is if it's not making me uncomfortable, there's no point in doing it. Right? I'm not here. I mean, there are places in the world for affirming literature, right? For literature that says everything's nice and good and we're happy and let's sing. There are places for that. There's a use for that. But that's never been the thing I've wanted to pursue. That's never been the thing that's turned me on. So when I'm writing, I'm driven to the places where I feel like I am speaking a truth. And that truth is, I'm hesitating because I'm not sure if I want to say always, but I'm inclined to say that truth is always hidden behind some structure of denial in my head. Sure. It is, and so I have to in order to get at the truth, I have to circumvent whatever structure I've built up to protect myself from that thing. And so it's going to be painful.
No, but I think for anybody who hasn't or will soon read your memoir, there's some incredible honesty throughout the thing. But one thing that speaks very popular or very personally to me and very important to me is this honesty around addiction and this kind of intellectual but very critical and thoughtful kind of response to addiction, especially addiction associated specifically to masculinity or manhood or men, boys, those who identify as masculine.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm wondering if I feel vulnerable or if I feel, because when I was drinking, I would drink to black out, right? I would drink to get to the point of saying, fucking nothing matters, right? And there was a kind of liberation in that. And how can I do that without destroying my life and my body and the people's lives around me? How can I get to a point where, I guess it's all kind of in, Buddhism. I'm sure there are, meditative practices that have figured this out. But as we started this whole conversation, I'm trying to get to some sense of clarity where some point that is not already overwritten by some other narrative, some instructive, some directive narrative about how I'm supposed to think and behave.
Prescriptive. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Is that possible? Probably not.
Time will tell.
Good. I can have this conversation for hours.
Yeah, no, I hope to. We hope to have you. Yeah, we hope to have you back.
That'd be great.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So is there anything that we can plug? You got anything coming out? You're doing your readings, or is there anything that people can find you online or whatever?
No, I'm not terribly active on social media.
So just go to your library, go to your bookstore, pick up some books, pick up some of Gregory's books.
We'll post it. Yeah. And read some poetry. Yeah. I'm telling myself, I'm going to read some poetry. I'm going to find that moment that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Find the turn. Yeah. You guys, you heard it here first. Gregory Pardlo in the house. If you want to find his information, we'll be posting it on our social media. That's going to be Masculinity Pod, MASK.
Hard K.
Ulinity Pod on Twitter and on Instagram, and then Masculinity Podcast on Facebook. Also, send us an email. Read the book. Send a love letter to Gregory Pardlo or read it to him. Masculinity Podcast. Well, I'll send it to him.
Okay, thank you.
Masculinity Podcast. That was okay. Masculinity Podcast at whoistheo.com.
Yo, and download Vert. Go to the App Store, download
Vert.
I got my chest hair out right now. You can see it on Vert, so go see it on Vert.
It's spring. Things are popping out.
Or you want to see Samantha's beautiful face, that too.
Remoy's also not wearing a hat today, so it's amazing. His beautiful,
my vulnerable, thinning hair on display.
I was gonna speak about his beautiful skin that he does nothing to get, but that's fine. Anyway, that's how you can find us. You guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging in this conversation about masculinity, about gender, about equity, because what it looks like is for us to really take a look at the whole picture and dissect this cake that we no longer want to eat.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, guys.
Damn.
I saw that, yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I really do. All right, you guys. This has been Masculinity. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Samantha Nzesi.
It's your boy, Remoy George Phillip, the first.
Thank you. Ciao.
Peace.